With that, we will switch to our second guest, who is Felix from Facebook. So Felix, welcome.
Hi, Christian.
Yeah, could you also please introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, sure. Super excited to be here. So thanks for having me, Christian. And also thanks to Hedwig for giving us all the insights. I actually learned a lot. So it's not very common that we are in the same room. So, and to be honest, also like these cookies, which you have in front of you, that's a big tease. And I really want them. They're really, really tasty.
You should imagine my position because I'm smelling chocolate all the time.
Yes, exactly. I think you have the hardest job there. So feel free to eat one. Quickly, an introduction about me. So first of all, pleased to be here. My name is Felix Meissner. I'm part of our product marketing team at Facebook. I'm a little bit, I think I'm soon 7 years with Facebook. I think hitting 7 years at the end of the month. Worked in different parts of the business, started in our small medium business org, worked in gaming. So I have like a strong performance marketing background. Had the chance to relocate to the Netherlands, worked for the last 2 years in our fashion sports retail team with the largest brands, which are headquartered in the Netherlands. And since like last year, made like a transition to our product marketing team. So how you guys can imagine it, I'm working with, first of all, our product org, then our sales teams and client teams, as well as our marketing teams to bring new products to market. But it also, which I want to call out, it doesn't only touch advertising, but also the platform. So I'm also interested in all things like Benelux specific cases. For example, we recently had the elections. So these are also big topics which are top of mind. And to spin it back to the talk. So I'm excited to talk about data and privacy with you, Christian. And I think you have a bunch of questions for me.
Yeah, definitely. Because we've talked to Google a bit on how to preserve data and how to remain relevant. I think what especially in your case is interesting that with the way that cookies and therefore the advertising possibilities on a Facebook platform are impacted, and with that broadening from a browser initiative, which is Safari first and then the others, but now is expanding also to iOS, where it starts impacting not only the Facebook site and Facebook cookie, but also the Facebook app. And how do you feel that the Facebook the targeting possibilities are impacted? And obviously, then second question would be how to deal with that situation.
Sure. I can try to answer this question. So, I mean, first of all, I think I would say that we're going through like a huge transition as an industry. When we look at advertising. But on the flip side, I also want to call out that we are actually doing this for the user, right? So like I'm kind of like, hopefully one day somebody will quote me on this, but privacy is not a bug. Yeah? So it's nothing we get around it. So therefore, I think here at Facebook, we think about it like on two sides. One is like similar to like what Hedwig's saying, we're thinking about the user, the platform. Yeah. And on the flip side is like, how can we build advertising tools which still ensure privacy? So to give you an example on the platform side, we are actually working on a couple of tools and features to give people who are using our family of apps, how we call it, more control. So we have, for example, a feature, I don't know if you've ever used it, but it's called Why I'm Seeing This post, for example. And that is true for advertising and as well as like a post that you see from friends, where you can actually control what you see and why you see it. So you can, for example, unfollow, hide. I don't know if you have like a lot of baby pictures in your newsfeed and then you would like maybe want to hide or snooze this person for a couple of months. But on the flip side, you can also kind of like have control over the advertising that you see. So that is like one feature. Next to another one, which I want to call out, is Facebook off Facebook activity, where you actually as a user have more control over third-party data, which is kind of used from apps or website used for retargeting purposes. And there you can, for example, have a little bit more leadway or leverage to control and clear your history, so to say.
Yeah.
And when we then spin it back to the advertising side, I think we are really working on like new technologies, like for example, our conversions API, which we can talk about in a little bit later in detail, but which is really ensuring how you future-proof your business with us when it comes to advertising. But I think there was also another element on your question on like the impact. And I actually believe, like, when we look back, and Hedwig already mentioned it, like when we look back in time, also when she started advertising, I think 2018 was a big moment for everybody with GDPR coming up and ITP, Safari browser changes. I think in 2019, there were like more cookie controls through Chrome. In 2020, like Apple, for example, started announcing iOS. And I would say these are all like changes which are coming from big tech. But then I think there's also, when we think about like the next 6 to 12 months, there's a lot of regulatory changes again also coming to us. But I think also personal opinion, I think all these developments are really great and making this industry innovative.
And that's an interesting point you're making. I see it the same way, and I began this talk with the example of walking into a store, getting the barcode on your head, and the guy holding up the brochures, which obviously wouldn't be accepted in an offline situation, and which at the moment we find really logical online. And from a privacy perspective, you could definitely argue like it's very good development that this type of misuse of privacy, if you want to call it, is being regulated. And that even browsers are saying, hey, we don't think that the law enforcement is good enough. We will take some initiatives ourselves. So that we as marketeers are also forced in a different way of doing our marketing. But the fact that we are forced into a different thing doesn't per se mean it's bad. And what we find really normal in an offline situation, if you go into a store, you can browse around anonymously and you go out and the store doesn't know and can't do anything with or for you. But if you have a question within that store, you walk up to a salesperson. That salesperson asks a question, learns a bit about you as a person. He'll give you an answer, give you personal service, and from that interaction, a personal relation or transaction will follow. And that kind of behavior, from my opinion, we need to sort of accept and embrace online as well. Accept the fact that there is an anonymous volume on your site or on the advertising platforms that will just browse around and go away, and who you don't know, and that you need to try to be the offline salesperson in your online activity. So how can I be relevant to that person given his questions, and how can I make sure, how can I seduce that person to ask the question to me? So if they're there, how do they want to interact with me so I can be more of personal relevance to them? But that's a different way of doing marketing. That's focusing on those people that make themselves known and have a certain amount of personal relevance. And to be able to do so, you need personal data. You don't have the cookies anymore, but you do get insights in what that person did because he wants to tell you. It's a different approach. You mentioned the conversions API. Now, obviously, this also goes a bit into that part. What data do you have that you can share for those kind of purposes? Could you maybe explain a bit more about it?
Yeah, sure. Also to comment on what you just said, I think I hear you. So I believe most companies are actually running working systems, right? So, and I believe that there's also, since you're describing like a problem of like identity and on having the identity also for users online, I think there's also like lots of work for companies to innovate in terms of like how their products are working. With regards, again, to privacy, with data and privacy in mind. And very practically, I think also for the people who are listening, I think how you can understand it, when you think about like a normal website, like let's say a sneaker web shop, yeah, versus like a wine shopping community, which is closed. The open public sneaker web shop probably is struggling with like identity for like upper funnel signals, but the closed wine community where you have to log in from the start kind of like can target people also in the upper funnel, more discovery channel. So I actually believe that there will be probably also developments where clients are thinking about like how their websites are structured to kind of like build up more identity But this is really like future music, I would say.
Yeah.
To comment, I think, on your question and like the conversions API, which is like our Facebook solution to still be able to ensure, let's say, optimization. And like, first of all, you can think like, okay, the most important is to optimize for purchase or like for lower funnel signals. And with like the developments that we discussed so far in this conversation, was that upper funnel signals are more and more getting lost. Retargeting will be more difficult. But I think Conversions API is really like an answer which can help still ensure this. And I think when we look also at like data points, so think about like when the cookie will basically force a pixel to go away or like make event optimization obsolete. We can share like that testing showed that if you switch from event optimization to click optimization, that the CPAs increased by 150%. So, and I think this is kind of like the trigger also for advertisers, brands who are kind of like thinking about the cookieless future. And I hope that this is like somehow rings a bell also and reminds them about the urgency to act now. And specifically to answer your question, I think the Conversions API, for everybody who didn't hear anything about this, we call it CAPI. It's like the abbreviation. You will probably hear me from now on use a lot. So it's basically like a Facebook pixel, but it works through like a server-side connection. So we basically kind of like have different events across the funnel, and you're matching events or like data points or match keys to this event. So for example, for purchase, you would match purchase signals that an advertiser has on their side to that event. And therefore you can optimize or retarget or even exclude audiences which are include or exclude audiences which are matching this this key.
Yeah, and if you're talking about including or excluding, so targeting options in general, how does that work? Because you're moving the pixel, so to say, from the client side, from the browser where it lives now, to the server side. How are you then able to recognize a user? Facebook can fix it on their end, or do I need to help in the identification, for example, because I have that person's email address and I can share it?
Yeah, sure. So how we approach it, and it's really early days for this, but I can share like how like brands and our client teams approach it. So it's really like a test and learn approach. So kind of like when you think about, and also to build the business case internally in your organization, the first step is to look at like, okay, how does the pixel work currently? Like, how's the performance as a baseline? Yeah. The next step is to understand like, how does the pixel work in combination with the Conversions API? So how does it work together? Because there's also performance gains from using both at the same time. And then I think another way is to test against like only the Conversions API to simulate like kind of the pixelless future or like the cookieless future. So when you then have like these three tests run against each other, you actually can understand like how the performance was. Yeah. To answer your question, like I would say the number one step is to replicate with the Conversions API what kind of data you share with the Facebook pixel currently. But the Conversions API really gives you the chance to review also data which you're sharing with us, as well as you are able to also share more data. Yeah. So which can be then used for better targeting, better exclusion, deeper funnel optimization, maybe also optimization which is more valuable to you as an advertiser, maybe LTV or margin. But it really comes down to the match keys. And advertisers can be more leaned in towards what data they are sharing or less leaned in. Yeah. And I think which is really important to map out what data you can share and then test ongoingly how this will affect performance.
Yeah. So there's also different layers where you could just make use of it to share the conversion data you have in your system, so you have a better insight into how the Facebook campaigns contributed to that conversion. because you're doing it from the server side, you still have the insight into measurement. But if you can expand that data with an identifier that you have in your systems, you can also make use of it for targeting purposes.
Exactly.
And into what we just discussed you know, you want to share a personal relevance, you know the customer, you know its current behavior, maybe you know something about his expected behavior. You share that and have a campaign ready for those people, so you have a higher relevance of those people that make themselves known. And the conversions API is the way to do it.
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, like, I think when we think about like benefits, I think there's this like short-term and long-term thinking, you know? So I think you asked Hedwig also, like, do we have to act now, or is it like really something which we have to do 6 to 12 months down the road? I think which the most important is that what we are talking about, like this like cookieless future, it doesn't come from one day to the other. It's like coming step by step. Yeah. So when we really like, it's kind of like a staircase, you know, with regards to signals. So and then when we look at it on a timeline, I think it started in like 2016, 17, and we are going into like 2020, and Hedwig actually confirmed it also, that big browsers will start reducing third-party cookie. So therefore, it's like when we think about the shift in the industry, it's really something which, in my opinion, is an act now kind of status, because it will take time until large organizations figure out like how it works for them. So we are talking about a heavy, I wouldn't say heavy, but a technical integration with a server-side API. For some companies, this is like a first, whereas others might be already faster on this. But it's really like important to embrace like the change. And what I also wanted to say, there's also positive sides. So I wouldn't actually see it also as like a pure defense strategy when it comes to advertising, because you will also be able to benefit from like increased performance in something which we call the redundant setup, where we have the Pixel and the Conversions API running at the same time. And you can basically enhance the signals that you're currently sharing with us. And a lot of advertisers that I have been speaking to recently are also want to become more advanced digital advertisers when it comes to optimization and also privacy. So, and I believe that the Conversions API really enables advertisers to optimize for signals which are really important to them. So I was mentioning it on the side like before, but think about like for like a big sports retailer, contribution margin is like the key in their business, whereas their campaigns are mostly optimized for purchase. So how cool would it be to optimize your campaigns instead of purchase for actually what is really valuable to your business, meaning contribution margin? And being able to do this through the Conversions API, I would say, is an offense strategy. And you can put actually your budget where your mouth is, and then also benefit from it, so to say.
Yeah, I like that idea, because the thing, you're not only, although we're forced, but we're going to focus more on personal relevance versus targeting everybody, and we're going to do it in a more effective way, since we're building the data pipeline anyway. Taking into account things like margin instead of revenue suddenly becomes more easy. So in that personal relevance, you can also be effective because you know more about the actual results. It's sort of contradictory, right? Where this development to limit the amount of data being shared to safeguard privacy leads to sort of a higher amount of personalization, but it's also just a shift to those people that are open to it. You know, make sure they are open for your message, and then make sure that you are as relevant as you can. Another thing let's, while I'm asking this question, I'd like to ask a question to the audience.
Sure.
Because there is obviously a chat. Who of you already tried working with the Conversions API? So if yes, put a 1 in the chat. If no, put a 0 in the chat. That's the easiest way. We can just count how many ones and how many zeros we can. So we will just have you doing so. Hedwig, while the 1s and 0s are coming in, Hedwig, Felix, I'm sorry. Conversions API is something you could argue is more on measurement, attribution, and more of the final part of the funnel where you know a user, so you add personal data. How about the upper part? I just want to target based on interest. How is that being impacted, or what developments are happening on that part within Facebook?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So, I mean, it's hard for me to speak about products which we haven't launched, but I think what I can share with regards to products like Facebook Shops or Instagram Shops, that we are also developing formats which are kind of like filling the gap between like lower funnel optimization and upper funnel optimization. So in maybe our environment, meaning on platform with Facebook. So think about like that you can use, for example, dynamic ads for shops as a solution, where you can target basically people who discovered maybe on your shop site on Instagram certain products, and you are able to retarget them. On the other hand, like Conversions API is still also a solution for our for upper funnel signals, if you are able to provide identity information for this. So it could be IP address, could be an email address, or whatever you can tie to like more upper funnel events. It's also part of this.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think how we think about it in Facebook, it's also like certainly products which are ensuring that you are still able to fulfill your optimization needs. So, and I believe that there's like, without sharing too much, that there's a lot of development also there. And an example would be, for example, a lead ad. Yeah, you still be able to collect a lead ad, whereas, or like a lead with a lead ad, and you don't need an optimization signal to do this. So it happens more on Facebook, but it is a performance kind of like ad format.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks for that. And that also sounds like, hey, as this is a new development, things are being developed, and obviously you can't share yet what's coming on. So we'll just have to make sure that we keep ourselves informed on all the updates.
Sure.
As the cookie is slowly dying, so are the death of the cookies, or the birth of many alternative ways that are coming into the market. You need to keep yourself up to date on what's happening here. So,
by the way, we saw a lot of zeros coming in.
Yeah, I'm a bit. Well, it does confirm the point we made earlier on. Everybody's sort of aware of the topic, but there's not that much movement yet. There's one, and there's
we have a few ones, but I think the most interesting part, like which we haven't touched on, is like, why is it maybe going slowly with this, and maybe what are the current blockers? And I can also talk openly about it. So from what I heard, are like the top blockers is, for example, tech resources. I don't think it's budget, because like it's really like kind of like core to some companies' business to run digital advertising, to keep their business afloat, especially in this time. But I think it's more coming to tech resources, and actually also the in-house knowledge in companies. So therefore, from a Facebook side, we are teaming up with agencies like Dept, which are super helpful in like kind of like helping us talk about these products and how important they are in conversations like this. But on the flip side, we are also embracing technology partners. So for example, we build up an entire ecosystem of partners, without mentioning specific ones, but we built like a signal ecosystem partner network, which can also help speed things up. Yeah. So for example, we have a direct integration with Shopify, which basically enables the conversion API connection in like a few clicks. Yeah. So therefore, it's kind of like easy also for smaller businesses which have built their website on Shopify to enable the Conversions API. Yeah. But for bigger brands, I think who are already using kind of like CDPs or CRMs, we are also teaming up with like the big players in the market. So for example, Telium as like a CDP, or Salesforce as a CRM. and kind of like building direct integration with the partners which clients are already using to make it easier and seamless and bridge the gap between like the lack of tech resources and which we see as one of the biggest blocker to jump on this innovation.
Yeah. Now, that's a good point. We're accustomed to just being able to work in the advertising platforms, but with this development and the solutions to this development that are becoming a bit more tech heavy, you either need to expand your team or to partner up with agencies or tech partners that can help you. So you still have a setup. If you want to give that personal relevance, you're able to do so from a technical perspective. And need to be aware that that's it's not this one tool or one button, but it's the several tools for their purpose, and especially looking into how can I share my first party data that I received, how can I share my CRM information to for example the conversions API, so I can make use of it in my advertising, and not all data is gone, but you do need to expand your skills or partner up with people to help you set that up. I think that is also a good sort of point to conclude our talk with. That yes, we're all impacted. There's not as much movement yet as it should be. We should all hopefully see this as a wake-up call and come into action, because you need to start making use of these tools. Preserve the data where you can. Expand your first-party data so you can share that and be of a high relevance, so you can give a proper answer to this privacy development and perceive it as an opportunity. It's not the death of the cookie is not a threat to marketing, as we know. It's a forced but good opportunity to become of a higher relevance, to respect the privacy, and seeking to how can I help my audience and how can I try to ask them the question so that I can be of a higher relevance to them. Seems like we need to get to work. So I hope everybody has now an idea or a direction in where to go. So to look into what tools or what steps to take, and so that at least you start looking into how to apply these tools and how to make them work for your situation. Felix, thank you very much.
I've said it better, Christian. So thanks a lot. So great summary, and I hope you can enjoy a cookie now. So
I definitely will. It's becoming more and more difficult not to touch all this chocolate. That's a good thing. There still are some cookies left. Thank you very much, everybody, for calling in. Thank you, Felix. Thank you, Hector, for sharing all your information, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Stay safe. Thank you. Bye.